De mare.
Welcome, family. Thank you for joining us from wherever you're joining us around the world. Welcome back to Africa Week 2020. This is our September reunion, and it is African Heritage Month. We have a new family member with us, so let's take a moment and welcome Saba to the Africa Week 2020 family. Yes. We have returning veterans here with Mazin and Duafa. And now we have someone who we know will be dragging into all kinds of planning and into all kinds of sessions. So familiarize yourself with this beautiful face, because you will be seeing her plenty. Because guess what? When we say we are everything, we really mean we are everything. And we do all these things. And this one right here, I mean, really, she does all the things like many of us who are tuning in and coming together. And I think in many ways, this is the blessing of Africa Week 2020. And it's one of the things that I love the most about this virtual family tree that we have and that we keep gathering under at least once a month, sometimes for 12 hours and sometimes for a full week, like this time around. So wherever you're tuning in from the world, please tell us hello or peace or something in your language, and tell us where you're from and where you're tuning in from, if that's somewhere different. I will start with myself. My name is Dima Mahmoud. I am Nubian from Sudan, and I am the mother and co-creatrix of Africa Week 2020, and it is my privilege to have these wonderful souls here with us. And I will start with our newest family member to share. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what keeps you up at night.
Ooh. Okay, well, hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here, like beyond words. I don't know the words to describe it right now, but I'm very happy. I am streaming in from College Park, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland. And what keeps me up at night, currently, well, I'm 21, just sneak peek. So big in media, politics, all that kind of current day stuff. I have to be, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing it right, I don't think. So policing definitely keeps me up. I'm scared for the younger, I call them children, but they're just a couple years younger than me. But like the undergraduate students that came here onto this campus, even right now in the pandemic, they still are coming on campus and living in these dorms. One of the dorms just got shut down. It's like they're on lockdown. Everyone has to stay in their room. They think it's like 200 people might be positive. So like that kind of thing. And then when you add the police into it, because the police always come in College Park, Maryland, it's severely over-policed. That kind of thing keeps me up at night, because as comfortable as I may be at any point in my life, even if I might not be too comfortable, I'm constantly in the mindset that there is bigger oppression, even if I'm comfortable, global oppression exists. So I can never be too comfortable. So that's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. Not every night, but some nights, yes.
Thank you. Yeah. as you'll get to see from the conversation, what keeps you up at night keeps us up at night, because we're all connected, and we're here to find solutions, because God, we all need to sleep just a little bit better. We just need to unplug for just a little bit.
Yeah.
Wafa, please introduce yourself. Wafa May, who you are, where you're from, and what keeps you up at night.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wafa May Elimin. I am tuning in from Richmond, Virginia. I am an accidental activist, I guess, as the name says. I do a lot of human rights advocacy. I'm like a digital organizer. I just really care about people a lot, so that tends to keep me up more than, like, kind of similar to Seba, like, it's amplified now so much more, just seeing how many people who like look like me, or how many people who are just experiencing a lot of things. We're all being stretched really thin, and you know, the idea of what you said, Dima, about resting often is so important. And lately I feel like it's just been like waking up like, am I exhausted, or is there just like a lot going on in my head or in the world? So you know, that's definitely something that keeps me up at night, but it's also the silver lining that like kind of keeps me going at the same time. So it's a two-way street. So just really glad to be here again. Really enjoyed the inaugural Africa Week experience. I'm excited to see that we have computers that are not crashing on us, thank goodness. Yeah, I did everything. Just cleared that out. But excited to be here. You know, we'll talk more about some of the stories, and the similarity to Dima and Mazen is that I'm also Sudanese. I'm Sudanese American. So I do find myself at the intersections of a lot of different conversations and identities, and just trying to figure out, there's times when one specific identity I have has to be in the forefront, and just trying to balance it all. So just happy to be here, and the family reunion always comes at a perfect time, at the perfect time.
Divine timing is real, Wafa. It's real. And, you know, since you said silver lining, it's great, because I'm going to quote Mazen here, because I quoted him earlier with the silver lining comment. And he wrote in his one of his latest pieces that he shared that silver linings are second chances we didn't know we need. And how true that is. And I hope that this silver lining is also specifically as keeping you up at night, but also being the drive to get up in the morning, is something that we didn't know we need. And I don't think the world actually understands just how much we need that, to wake up, to not continue being asleep, to not continue burying our heads in the sand. On that note, Mazen, I think everyone pretty much knows you by now, and you've been glued to this machine. I see you're frozen, so I don't know if you can hear me. I hope you can. Maybe you can share with us, or yeah, there you are. Okay, tell us, Mazen, what keeps you up at night?
Hi everybody. I hope I don't have to do introductions. I think at this point everybody knows me. But if you don't, hi, my name is Mazen. I'm an epidemiologist by training, a grad student, finishing up my final semester, inshallah. So currently school is what's keeping me up. But besides school, I think just the intersection, or the marriage of academics plus the real world. What I mean by that is, for example, you know, things like maternal mortality, which I study in books, and then, you know, having people that, you know, actually pass away due to maternal mortality, things of that nature, and injustices of all kinds definitely keep me up at night. Inshallah, you know, we can figure something out to kind of at least quell those things, if not permanently, at least temporarily. But yeah, that's me. I'm Mazen.
Thank you, Mazen. Just a little bit of a background about this panel, and again about the insane juggling that it takes to pull something like this, or to also just bring us together, or pull us together as a people, whether we're in the same country or, you know, spread across the world. We have Neida De La Rosa, tuning in from Chicago. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And let us know if you would call yourself an accidental activist. And later, hopefully, we'll have time to open the discussion. And if someone wants to hop in and tell us their best practices, because you know what, we're in this together, and to know how to keep moving forward, we need to change. We need to exchange the things that worked for us and the things that we know has caused us pain or somehow shackled us from moving forward. Even in terms of like self-sabotage, because we do that, we do that a lot. And I'm probably going to be starting one of them tonight as I get into that. But a little bit about this session. So this is something Wafa and I speak about often, and in my interaction with Wafa and how we came to work together the very first time, which I'll let her discuss that in terms of this campaign, the Justice for Noura campaign. But it was really a matter of just being put in a WhatsApp group or in an email chain, and then next thing you know, you're putting your head up and you're in the middle of a protest or or at the heart of a movement, and you don't know how or when it happened. And it's not necessarily that it wasn't intended or you didn't want to take on that role, but it's just it wasn't where you saw yourself going well before any of that started. For me personally, I remember just being completely and adamantly against being in politics. Like my mother was like, "Oh, I see you as a diplomat." I was like, "I don't want to do politics. I don't want to do political science. I'm not interested. I just want to sit here and make films and edutain people in that way. I want people to learn something by laughing, and that's what I want to do." She didn't take that very well, and those of you who know my mother know that she gets her way. Well, actually, those of you who know African mothers know that they get their way. So that's that. But this panel was going to start like basically a conversation where it was going to be sort of a round table of accidental activists, which is now it's turning out to be. So we're coming into a full circle here. But then we have to change the time, and so because some of the speakers were no longer available, and then all right, okay, so let's see who we can bring in here, and it was going to be all the ones that we had were women. So it's like, okay, so shall this be a daughter of a diaspora panel, and how we have we become all these activists, because there are some fierce sisters that are coming center stage right now in the square, and you'll get to hear some of them here, two of them here, and then that didn't happen because of the change. And then okay, we're like, all right, so what else can we do? Okay, we know Mazen, and Mazen just had a panel at Nubia Fest talking about activism in the diaspora from a Nubian perspective. And he was doing it on his personal capacity. Before he bites my head off, he was doing it on a personal capacity, not as the Nubia Initiative and not as the Ubuntu Fellow, but what it means to be an activist, and what does activism even mean, which goes back to a conversation that we were having last night at the family hour. Do we really need labels? And so we're like, okay, so if we bring Mazen in, it's no longer just women, but there's a new link here that we're all going to be Sudanese. And with those of you who know or have been following the revolution that was sparked in December 2018 in Sudan, and some would argue was sparked earlier in September, but for it to take the form it's currently in, and I say currently in because the revolution continues, because revolutions don't stop, and I will keep saying this at every single panel. And if you're shaking your head or rolling your head, ask yourself why. Because there is something that is telling you to think that the revolutions stop. Revolutions do not stop. So, Sudan, an entire country, and its diaspora became accidental activists overnight, because whether we liked it or not, and no, I'm not saying that people weren't active before. I'm not saying that people weren't engaged before. I'm not saying people weren't protesting before. I'm not saying we didn't have marches before. I'm just saying this was the first time the entire country and its diaspora were in unison. It didn't matter where you were in the world. It didn't matter who you are in Sudan. You're Sudani. 2019, you were an activist. Full stop. Point blank. Got to a point where we would leave our houses and just go stand in the corners, the intersections of our streets, and just hold a sign that said, "Ask me about Sudan." And that's the angle we were going to take. We were going to discuss about how our country and our people became accidental activists. But then this queen here comes in, Saba tunes into our early session on the role of media coverage in conflict resolution and in covering conflict. And she literally hit every topic we were going to be discussing here. And it felt very, very, I mean, it's still the horn, and I should go back and get my unicorn mug, because it says, "I will shank you with my horn." And I really, really do feel that this is what Africa's telling the world. Not because the sun shines from the east or anything. We're not that biased, but yeah. We're ready to shank that world, and we're ready to really sharpen that horn and say, what now? So please tell the family the first time, if you remember, you were called an activist, and what that meant to you and how you took it. Let's any open discussion. So jump in however you want to jump in.
Well, I want to jump in just because it's very interesting. I just found out yesterday. I just told you, Dima. I just found actually it was this morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I was doing my homework and just being browsing the net. Searched my name up on Google actually, and I had just looked to see what my first media mention was, because I'm trying to like get that together for my website. And I found out I didn't even remember, but it was well documented that in 2015 I was and this was when I was 16 years old. I was in the Baltimore Sun talking about the unrest that was happening in Baltimore, and I didn't live in Baltimore. I lived like kind of like, I guess, just suburb of Baltimore, Crofton, Maryland. I was at Panera. And I literally, and it's a video, and it's so amazing because in the video I was literally like, that people just don't care. And I don't know what it's gonna take for people to care, but we just need to be aware. And I didn't even call myself an activist at that point. In the article was actually the first time that anyone that I know ever called me an activist, and that was put in the newspaper. And then a couple months later, there's another article that came out from the Capital Gazette that was talking about, it's the other way around. The Capital Gazette had me talking about the Baltimore unrest, and then the Baltimore Sun had me talking about Selma. Me and my class went to go, and mind you, I'm the only Black person here. My entire class went to go watch Selma in the movie theaters, and then we had a post-movie discussion. And I was the only Black person talking about these things. And I said things like, I'm going to actually quote it because I don't want to get it wrong or anything. But I was in there 2015, 16 years old, saying, talking about, so this is what it said in the article, talking about race isn't common for the school, Saba Shabaka, 16 of Gambrills. She thinks that because race is such a sensitive subject and some students wouldn't be interested in listening to her opinions, in the classroom, teachers had students write down their thoughts before speaking them. And I was quoted saying, we should have to do that for all of our classes. So that article didn't call me an activist, but you can see I'm engaging the community. I'm saying I think that all of our classes should have discussion-based, all of us getting to know each other's opinions and it being healthy. 16, I didn't even know the words for it. So everything that you're saying about labels, in that article, it did never call me an activist, but I'm sure anyone that reads it could probably tell where it's going. And now 2020, also back in the Baltimore Sun, all over my schools, like we were talking about before, independent reporting newspaper, they're quoting me. They have my face up on these like articles and stuff like that, talking about police brutality. It's kind of crazy, but full circle for real. And I think it chooses you, quite simply. There's a lot that we could and I'm so excited to like get into what your all stories are and everything. But I feel like when I think of accidental activists, and you know, you're talking about putting the question mark behind it, because it's like, I do believe it chooses you. I didn't even remember that I was in those articles at all. Like that might be me in my bad memory, but yesterday is when I found out about that. So I'm big on archiving things. So for myself though, not for everyone else, but this is something else I put on my website. Like, I know that even if I made something and I made it just for Black women, if I made it just for you, Dima, if I made it just for you, Afa, other people would take it. Black men would probably take it, and that's okay, because you know, that's our nourishment that we give out as Black women. But it is important. I think the intention and the purpose behind things are really important, because the things that I do it for myself and the rest of the kids that are coming behind me, specifically going into the University of Maryland. Unfortunately, if I look around current day at the people that support me, Black people that support me at the University of Maryland, it's not looking too good. And that is another side of accidental activism that I hope we're gonna be able to talk about inside of this, kind of like performative activism, and like literally being active on accident, or and really not having your intentions match why these issues are actually here. Because I think that's really important in kind of like being able to see through the BS. So yeah.
Yeah, you went there. Yeah, yes. Wafa.
Yeah, I think like I really, really love what you said, Sova, about like how it chooses you. And I think that's really exactly like what happened to me. Yeah. Make sure you date and timestamp that, because we can like auction it off for Africa Week 2025.
It's the t-shirt. I told you, we have a wall of quotes from Africa Week 2020, and each of them will be a t-shirt with the name of the person who said it at Africa Week 2020.
Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait. I'm gonna get them all. I can already tell. But yeah, I think for me it was, I had just graduated college. I went to Virginia Tech, and I had been very detached from like my Sudanese side of my culture while I was in school. And I think that was largely in part due to the fact like I wasn't around family. I was at a PWI. It was just a lot of new things happening, and there's a lot of self-discovery happening there. But then when I moved back home, it was very grounding to be back. But the one thing that was missing for me was that connection to like my Sudanese community. And that was something that I had throughout, you know, since we came here to the US. I was like 5 years old when we came here. So it was really necessary for me to like reconnect with that side. And I'm not one who, I mean, I've grown up in the area, like in the DMV area, like my whole life, but I hadn't really immersed myself into the Sudanese American community. And then I moved back home, got involved with this group called Moving Forward Sudan, and we just worked to really just advocate and create opportunities for our young professionals and like young students to connect and really bridge that gap, because there's so many just already pre-existing barriers in this country, but then add on top of that, like being in a new country, not knowing the language. So, you know, us being second generation or the middle children in our families was really important to, you know, I was translating documents with my mom when I was young, and it's just like kind of that perception. So in that's how I met Dima, and also coincidentally through that experience, Mazen as well. So, you know, our community really found a way to connect through like WhatsApp groups and through events. And the story of Noura Hussein came into one of the channels, and it was talking about a young Sudanese girl who was forced into child marriage. And it seemed like a lot of people were really like animated by the conversation. Me being in the community leadership position, I saw it was getting a little bit spicy. I think a few of us had noticed. And so we took it to a separate channel. And something that came from that was just a lot of people who really wanted to help, just like myself. And I have like an academic background in international relations. And affairs and international studies. So I was looking at more from like a global lens from the beginning. So it was just really cool to see how all of us hearing about this case, hearing about her and acting in self-defense and killing her abuser or her husband. And it really just surfaced a lot of issues in Sudan, like in regards to like gender-based violence, child marriage, you know, the idea of trigger warnings, marital rape and all of that stuff, just to make sure that, hey, we hadn't talked about this at all. You know, we hadn't really related to this. And you were getting people like 16-year-old girls who were like, oh, I totally get that. Like, I want to go to school. I want to do all of these things. There's so much more for me to accomplish. And then Demo is actually part of the core group. And fun fact is I can't really read or write Arabic too well. So I mean, that was like such a important piece of like just knowing like the gaps in my skill sets and knowing that my team members were like, hey, you to understand what was happening in the case, like I had to read legal documents where I was like, I don't know what's happening. So that I guess that was part of like the accidental journey, was knowing that, you know, we were all doing something so much bigger, because Noura was up for execution. Her act was punishable by death. And, you know, I got to learn a lot about Sudan in regards to like tribalism and having to translate that from me just knowing it as a thing and growing up around it, and knowing the history of Sudan, to trying to get that to an international audience, right? Like getting people to understand like African heritage, Sudanese heritage is going to look different from Western traditions. So when we are talking about child marriage, we can't just look at it from the lens of this is like wrong, because it is. But when you think of it, like the necessity for it was when you were in a household, the younger your children were and participating in the house, like you'd be able to farm and agriculture. And but as we've transitioned to like a more modern society, I think a lot of those antiquated beliefs were just it hit the diaspora really hard, to be like 14 days we have to save this young girl's life. And something from that came like this global network that I didn't even know existed. Someone who had just gone from not being connected at all to her Sudanese culture or her community members, and it just being like a family thing, to being more extending, like Dima, like you've been talking about, this is a family reunion. And I think every single time I find myself in these spaces of activism, it really is, it's like so wholesome to the point where I'm like, this, it fits, you know, like I fit here, you know. And I'm shy, so I was able to like, yep, it chose me. I think that I was, you know, always trying to like tiptoe around it, and try and find like the traditional routes, but then realize I didn't really have a traditional upbringing or an experience, and there's really no need to close myself off from the fights that I want to fight, you know, because they might not be my own. I might not understand it. And one of the biggest things that just making it an awareness campaign is in like, hey, this is an opportunity to ask questions. This is an opportunity to challenge yourself and your thinking, as to like, why don't I like this? And then something that came from that was changing the legal age for marriage in Sudan. Something that came from that was young girls talking to their parents and their families about like some inappropriate behavior in the households, and just creating more opportunities for that. Even like clothing discrimination, you know, women were allowed to be able to say like, hey, like I've experienced this when I've worn pants, you know, like I've been assaulted or harassed or just made really uncomfortable just walking. So that was really cool to be a part of. And that's where I met Mazen at a rally that we had in DC. And that was still like, I still talk about it to this day. It was like a very mind-blowing connection of like, I think so often we think that like only women are in the front, but it's just very nice to have that backing of like the male support, saying like, hey, I'm going to pass you the mic, but also when I get it too, like I'm going to take the time to really think of it from like a lens that I hadn't seen. You know, Mazen tied in Islam and the need for advocacy and like women and equity and equality. I don't like the word equality. I'm trying to get away from using it and using like equity in my head, just because it's a personal thing. So always like, yeah, challenging myself in ways like that, just to be more conscious of what I say. But yeah, and learning, so like to this day, I think being able to pick up the phone and say like, hey, like I need something. All the people I know I call are the ones who have fought the fight, or who have like been like, hey, I'm not sleeping. I don't really know what time it is, but somebody in Turkey needs an interview, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this little media thing. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, so it was a really, really, it was like, I experienced like camaraderie in that activism. You know, I learned how to find my voice and lend it to others, and vice versa. So that was, and like, thank you to all of you, like Dima and Mazen and everyone who, like, you know, 1.7 million people around the world signed a petition. You know, that was something that like we all did collectively. So yeah, and that's when I realized I can do this. Whatever it is, it's doable.
Yeah, yeah, we can, and I think it has, again, a lot to do with whatever we've been conditioned by a system, whether it's a failed education system or just a society that's operating on axes that are imbalanced, because we are denying an important part of our identity. Ooh, I hope you saved whatever was going to to fall. Yeah, well done, Wafa. Mazen, do we still have you here? Because you seem frozen. But I do know. But yeah, we do have you. Okay, Mazen, tell us, when were you first called an activist?
I think I was first called an activist in the fourth grade. I don't really remember what had led up to this incident, but I just remember that there was a protest that we were hosting at my elementary school, and you know, we had walked around the block carrying these giant banners with Malcolm X quotes on them, and taken like blow horns and microphones and walked around the block yelling, "I'm black and I'm proud," and I'm gonna say it loud. Um, I don't remember what exactly had occurred, or what had led up to that particular situation. But I just remember that as being one of my like earliest memories of what quote unquote activism looks like. Um, yeah, and then I guess the next incident, although I didn't really think about it in terms of activism, I just thought about it in terms of equity. Was when I started Swag, which is the organization that I spoke about in the previous panel. But I don't think about that as activism per se. I just think about that as trying to level the playing field. You know, so I think that those were really two of the earliest incidents that really stuck out to me personally.
Yeah, thank you, Mazen. And just a plug here: if you've missed that morning panel about Black men mentoring and mental health, please make some time to go and see it. We often hear, and I know I'm personally guilty of that. We often hear in these conversations with especially with the Black Lives Movement, to protect Black women, to honor the Black woman, um, to listen to the Black woman. Very, 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 very little focus, very little attention um, is given to the Black man, to whatever mental health issues that Black man might be dealing with, whatever juggling that Black man is working with or navigating, or somehow that it's a competition of who's struggling more, or who's more in pain, or who should be heard more than who. So please, please, please make some time to go see the navigation between these, you know, these three angles of being a Black man today, but also what mentoring Black men looks like and why it's significant, and why we need to really take a closer look at Black mental health, um, specifically from a gender perspective. My story about being called an activist was actually, so the first time I was told I am going to be labeled an activist was during the Justice for Noura campaign, which I found really, really interesting now. Like in retrospect, when I go back and reflect on that or look into that, I really wonder why that's when it was called. Because what year was that again, Wafa? Everything's a blur.
2017.
2017.
17. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah. So in 2006, when Israel invaded Lebanon, I was so angry. For many reasons, but on a personal level, I was so angry because I had planned going to Lebanon. That was going to be my mother's graduation present to me. She said, you can go anywhere you want in the world. And I chose Lebanon, and I was getting ready to go to Lebanon. And she's like, why don't you wait a little bit on that decision? And then let's revisit it later. And I know that when my mom's saying that, it means it's not going to happen. But it's like, no, I'm choosing Lebanon. She's like, okay, let's revisit this in 3 days. And she said 3 days. And on the third day, Israel invaded Lebanon. And it's just like, well, not invaded, but a bombed attack. Well, I mean, okay. It's just like, it's you cursed that trip. Kidding. I was part of the organizing team of a protest that yielded over 22,000 people outside the White House. I wasn't called an activist then. I didn't even necessarily know just, what, and I still don't know what is an activist, because like at the heart of it, it's someone who's in action, right? And we're always in action. We're always moving. And whether what we're doing has that kind of value or has that kind of impact is a different story. But again, it goes back to who's calling us an activist. So I was being interviewed for this Justice for Noura campaign, and the interview was like, so you're an activist? I was like, hang on, where'd you get that from? Like, no, I'm not. She's like, but yes, you are. And I was like, says who? Like, who are you to tell me I'm an activist? I'm a humanist. I am someone who believes in human life. I am someone who will sit here and not sleep and do everything in my power to protect humanity, to wake humanity up in any way that I can, and to make it like central to how we function in this earth. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't like labels. I don't do labels. Please don't label me. She said, but I need to know how to call you. Said, you can call me Dima. That's what my mom called me. And she chose that name. My parents chose that name for me. Feel free to call me that. But to me, I don't know if it's because I didn't want to be labeled, or because of, in this day and age, especially in our countries, in our side of the world, being called an activist is essentially a death sentence in so many ways, or a sentence of some form. And then you start worrying about your family and your cousins, or your friends, your family, your colleagues, your comrades, whatever, because you have that label on you, on what you're doing, when really all you're trying to do is shed some light. All you're trying to do is bear witness to something that's happening, and you're just saying that's not going to pass unnoticed. That's literally all that it is. And it happened again with the Sudan revolution sparking at the magnitude it had last year. And really, again, I don't know. I don't understand. I'm still not even sure how it reached that point. But I just went and I set camp outside the embassy of Sudan. And I sat there and I'm like, I'm not moving. I can't be on my soil. This is as close as I can be in Sudan. So I'm just going to sit here. And I didn't even have Facebook activated at the time. And everyone was like, oh, you need to be on Facebook. You know, you need to share with people what you're doing. I was like, nah, I'm not really doing this for the people, because I really genuinely, it was the only way for me to be calm. I was so restless for 3 weeks before going and sitting on the steps of the embassy. I was extremely restless, and it didn't just calm down until I sat on those steps. It didn't do that. It's just like, so no, I'm not sure. I'm here to support my people, to sit in solidarity with them, because they had started the sit-in in Sudan. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm doing the same thing they're doing. I'm sat here in the comfort of Washington, D.C. My biggest threat is a storm, or a rat in the D.C. streets, or a mouse. Yeah. That's it. Maybe someone drunk going down the street. Maybe, I'm not going to sit and compare that to someone who is facing live ammunition, who is facing, militia whose job was to eradicate Darfur. They basically set Darfur on fire and killed over 300,000 people. That's what my brothers and sisters were facing on the ground. And I wasn't going to sit and pretend that I'm doing the same thing or even anything close to it. So I rejected it. I was like, no, this isn't about that. Then I had my phone start blowing completely out of proportion, and people saying, okay, because someone had come to the embassy and recorded a video of me. And I didn't even realize that this person was recording a video, because they had asked, can I record a video? And I said, no, because I said, this isn't about my face. I don't want my face on this. Even if you are going to record it from a distance. Record the fact that someone is sitting outside the embassy. Don't make it about me. Because this isn't about me. This isn't even just about Sudan. This is about so much more. As far as I was concerned, at that point, this was a global Black Lives Movement. And this was connecting the land of the Blacks with all what that meant and all the weight that carries historically to everywhere else the oppression of people of African ancestry was occurring or continues to happen. And I'm glad that they did record at the end, because that message rings true today, just as much as it did at the time, in that revolutions do not stop, in that we cannot trust the system, in that whatever crumbs they tell us they are going to give us are just that, they're just crumbs, and we cannot be tricked, we cannot trust them, because anyone and anything that is part of that kind of system is complicit. And yeah, after that, it was just people reaching out, people saying, and I needed to get onto some platform to be able to, I don't want to say navigate, but to be able to make sure that my narrative is my narrative and no one's speaking on my behalf. No one is telling people that this person is that, because then, and I can't believe how many times Kandaka Gate is coming up already, and we're just in day 2 of Africa Week 2020. But, people start calling me Kandaka, which is like, has many different names, many different meanings, but warrior queen, queen mother, da, da, da. In that context, it is the warrior queen. And she's like, don't call me Kandaka. Again, I haven't paid that tax. Don't invoke that. And I'm Nubian, and it's okay for me to say that, but it's just, again, it's not about any one person. Yes, Saba's writing in the private chat, and I wish she would write it in the main comment, but she's writing, people will try to make you a martyr, and people absolutely will try and do that, and will try.
I didn't even realize it was private. I thought that this is the public chat this whole time. I'm just like, I wish I could see it. I'm like, I agree so much. I didn't know this was the private chat, but yes, they will put it on you. And then the first time, that's the kind of thing that I think of when you're talking about what's the first time someone called you an activist. For me, the most shocking one was the first time that someone implied that I like would lose my life over this. Like that someone else said it before I said it out loud. And I was just like, interesting. You know, it definitely was a self-reflection moment. I had to come home and be like, I mean, now that you brought it up, I guess that is the conversation I have to have with myself. But that was before I even considered myself an activist or anything. You know, people, all these words, people just put them on you. And I think these are the ones that we know for a fact we haven't said ourselves. But if we look at the bigger picture all the time, people try and, I mean, with this crazy Black woman stereotype and every stereotype, people will literally put these things onto you and like, some horoscopes even. I realized when I was younger, that's the first time, because it was like, oh, someone was saying, because I'm a Scorpio, my birthday is November 17th, by the way, because I'm a Scorpio, I'm like this. And I'm just like, okay, that's not all of me, but maybe sometimes like on a couple Tuesdays, I felt like that just because, but it's just like, I'm so multifaceted, all of these labels. But so I didn't mean to stop you from what you're saying too. I just had to. Oh, hers is November 18th.
So we have
Wow,
November 17th,
so
November 18th here, and this is just another reason why I'm saying I really wanted you, and I couldn't wait for the two of you to connect, because I know that there's going to be magic created here. Mazen, when's your birthday?
Did you just ask me my birthday, Dima?
I did. Are you uncomfortable with
because
that?
I'm African, we don't really believe in birthdays now. It's April 29th.
I was just going to say, what do you mean we don't believe in birthdays? Okay.
Birthdays are haram. No, but it's April 29th.
Yeah, that's not an African thing. We celebrate life. Well, Saba, I definitely credit my Aquarius streak. You know, being the humanitarian of the zodiacs. I'll take that. I'll say that. But yeah, also say that I'm not any one thing. And like we were saying, you know, why do we have to be one thing or the other? And why can't we just really, truly embrace that we are everything and that we can do more than one thing? And it may not make sense to someone, but it makes sense to us. And as long as it's making sense to us, is it really a problem? And it goes back to that question mark that I was thinking of adding after the accidental activist. Is it really accidental? You know, is it really unplanned, or was this our destiny altogether? Is it just because we're people of African ancestry? So that's sort of like the expectation. It comes with the melanin. Oh, melanated activist. There we go. And that's that's where that's at. But that does take a toll. That does take a toll on us. And I really I admire how each of you has navigated that. I know this is something I'm personally struggling with. And continue to struggle with, because while sitting at the embassy, there was a lot of things that I couldn't move as freely as I wanted. I couldn't take on the contracts that I could. So I've had to just release some of these contracts, because consciously speaking, I refuse to take money for something I haven't done and I haven't performed at 100%. I refuse to do it. So that also meant that I'm losing work. That also meant that I'm losing money. That also meant that it's stressing me out, because I need to now find another way to support or sustain myself. So really the second part of the title of this session is balancing pain, pennies, and purpose. How do you do it? This is a free conversation, and please don't feel like, please do interrupt me and go forward.
Yeah, so I think I've been talking a lot, Dima, we've talked a lot about this in the last couple of weeks. Typically, I think along with, I don't know if you all have, I'm sure, I know you all have experienced burnout. But burnout is completely different when this is, I guess, air quote, voluntary work, although I don't think it's voluntary. I feel like it's like a calling that just has to, like, I'm uneasy if I don't do what I can at my capacity. And I think I've often found myself telling people, you know, take rest often. You can't serve others unless you serve yourself. And I just realized that it's a lot more challenging for people who are dedicated to serving others and just wanted to, like, I'm a grassroots girl. I am, you can throw me knee deep into any community and I'll find a way to make it work. And I've never really figured out the way to balance all of that. For some reason, I think it's not only in this country, but like a lot of service-based occupations, they don't pay very well. And that's where the voluntary piece comes in. So it's like you're voluntarily tapping into your savings or tapping into money that you might not have to be able to execute an event or to be able to create little goodie bags to pass out to houseless individuals in your neighborhoods, you know. So there's a lot of different ways that sustaining yourself becomes put on the back burner. You know, I find myself putting my sleep and my priorities just as like, oh, I'll get to it later, or I can do it at another time. But then I'm realizing that I'm not, you know, I'm still just now think I'm finding, like, I was laid off during this pandemic, and it's, you just being smack dab in the center of that, realizing, okay, there's a great opportunity here to just be with my communities and just really feel everything that we're feeling together. And it was like back to back. And I really think the idea of entrepreneurship and the idea of self-service and just like working for yourself is oftentimes just not really something that we harp on too much. Social entrepreneurship is kind of like a new concept. And balancing that is like knowing, like, okay, well, I have to know that there's disparities that exist here, like with healthcare, with transportation, with all of the, like, living, all of those things. So having to prioritize making sure those get delivered on is like a super important. And I think just like a conversation that people don't have early on, that like you're gonna find yourself in a lot of difficult situations quite often, but still in those spaces, finding ways to advocate for yourself, you know, whether that be through, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna go take this walk right now, accidentally turn off my Wi-Fi, just like unplug for a little while. So I think, yeah, I'd love to hear like Mazin or Seba, or I know for me, I'm still like in the early stages of like, oh, I'm just exploring what business is, because it's been told like, hey, you go to school, you go to college, you get the degree, you do the blah, 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 blah. But as the world is really painting out, it's not very picturesque. It's not like it's not a solid frame that everyone gets. It's kind of, you have to roll with the punches. So I think being in the space now where I can be fully submerged in my communities, I'm finding a lot more of, you know, connecting internationally is something that I just like really love. And I think it's really because there's so many people like me in all corners of the world that I don't want to just limit myself to one. So yeah, sorry, I rambled, and I tend to like go on, but yeah, so it's really just it's a tough challenge to really be able to say, like, do I sacrifice my free time or do I spend that time with others and for others? So it's just cool to be a part of the shift and the transition of where like the work that we do is like becoming more normalized, and you're finding
I wouldn't put it in air quotes. It's definitely
It's work. Yeah, you're right.
And it's like saying, oh, it's a labor of love. Yeah, Africa Week 2020 is a labor of love. That doesn't mean it's free.
Yep.
That does not mean love is of great value.
Yeah.
People will go to war for love, to feel love, to feel like they belong. That's, you know, your time, your energy. That's all value. Because guess what? When you get sick, when you get ill for staying up for I don't know how long you end up staying up for, it'll cost money to get better.
Yeah.
It'll cost money to go to the doctor. It'll cost money to go to hospital. It'll cost money for you to recover. And so, yeah, it's not free. We have Mazin here. Mazin, I know there you have the entrepreneurial. Well, you and Saba both have your entrepreneurial hats. Well, you have many hats. And Saba, I hope we'll get to see some of those. Tell us how, and especially within the light that we were discussing earlier, from the angle of pain, mental health, and mentoring, and being a Black man, and being an activist, and being a Black man defending Black women and the rights of Black women, which, you know, we'll just put you to the side, I suppose. What does that look like? How do you balance all of these? How do you deal with being a Black man fighting for Black women and then being called a misogynist and be okay with it?
You know, there was a great quote that I came across, and it said, you know, lions do not worry about the sayings of sheeps. And so, you know, the people who do call me a misogynist don't really understand what I'm about, you know, and they don't really understand the things that I've done or the things that I continue to do. I think what they do get wrong is they think, you know, like, if I see an injustice, I'm just going to roll over and let it be. You know, I don't really care whether it's a man doing wrong or whether it's a woman doing wrong. At the end of the day, a wrong is a wrong, you know? And unfortunately for people, I'm not the kind of person who is going to allow things to be done intentionally wrong in my presence, you know? I don't think that's fair. I don't think you should wrong anybody in any way. And so a lot of people don't like getting called out. They don't like accountability. And I mean, I guess that's kind of what leads me to be called a misogynist, because it doesn't matter to me if you're a man or a woman doing wrong. You know, either way, you've done something wrong. I'm going to call you out for it. But in regards to the question, I don't balance things, and that's the honest truth of it. You know, my coping mechanism is getting myself knee deep into things that I can't get done. You know, or things that won't get done. And so, like, whenever I get stressed, I'm like, all right, I need to find a project to work on. I need to find something to do. And it's a really vicious cycle, to be 100% honest. And the reason why it's a vicious cycle is because there are other things I need to get done, like studying for the MCAT to be a physician. Sometimes I have to put that aside to do certain things. And I think about it, you know, like, what kind of doctor would I be if I wasn't fighting for people's rights? Like, how does that work? That doesn't make sense, you know. And so when it does get tough, I realize, like, there's a bigger picture here. Because I'm gonna become a doctor, inshallah. At the end of the day, that's gonna happen. But I also have, like, there's things that are timely and that need to get done, and, like, you know, this person who is, you know, about to be killed in 14 days, like, I can study after the MCAT. You know, like I can study after those 14 days for the MCAT. This person is not. They may not get a 15th day, you know. So, like, I need to put this on pause and just being able to prioritize things. Unfortunately, a lot of times, you know, as I said earlier, I don't, you know, really balance things. So, like, what I need to get done ends up becoming priority number, you know, 1,000,010. But yeah, that's just, yeah, there's no I haven't figured out how to balance things yet. I'm still working on that. I would love some advice from, you know, anybody who's tuning in, and from my fellow panelists on that. Please guide me, give me some tips.
As you see her nod her head and she's ready to drop the wisdom, please choose the hat that is coming with this advice. And you said you want no higher because your name is covering it. There you go. Yes, yes, yes.
I mean, everything that you said about balance, it kind of had me starting to think like, okay, I mean, I know that something that me and Dima were just talking about, anyone that looks into my life will probably think it's chaotic, right? But I feel grounded, but balanced. Would I say I feel balanced? You know, that had me thinking. I don't know how much wise words I could give you because you have me thinking balance. I don't know if I could call myself that either because so I was saying I'm a kind of a visual person, so I'd like to share my screen so I can show you all kind of what I mean by this. If it'll work for me. Can you all see my screen? I don't know. Oh, okay. I hope you guys can. Okay, cool. I was like, I can't hear anything. So like, this is interesting. So this is my website, just fun fact. But this, at first it bothered me because I was like, it's not perfect. But I was like, and this is something so small. Of course, probably no one who comes to my website probably thinks about this, but it's accurate for me because I'm not balanced. I'm kind of over the lines. It kind of overlaps, but it's still cute. And that's me. That's what I feel like. So that's just what I felt like about balance. But I guess really just kind of expanding on that, I also dip my toes into a lot of things. So I don't ever want to brand myself just one thing. That's why on my website, it's just me at first. And if you scroll down a little bit, you know, it'll have some logos and stuff like that. But I'm not defined by these logos. So I'm an entrepreneur, though, for real. Like, and everything you said. Oh, sorry. About like, just being able to basically being, it's very important to me to be able to have the narrative and around entrepreneurship. And I feel like for myself, I'm redefining what it's like to be like a social entrepreneur and not necessarily like be an entrepreneur because I'm a boss. I'm my own boss, period, point blank. But also like really wanting to do a lot for other people. So inside of being an entrepreneur, my first business is Rendered Inc., which is a sustainable fashion brand because I do truly care a lot about sustainability. So when we started out, it was literally just mostly a blog site for me, low key, because I was like, I really care about sustainability. I just want to tell people why we can't afford these cheap ass clothes, like alternate clothing options, like literally, like I was trying to tell people. And so I made this blog site, and I also was doing things around the business, but I never really documented it. I never really put pictures anywhere. So it didn't seem like it really happened. So I started out, so Rendered Inc. is a sustainable fashion brand. We take clothes from thrift stores and consignment shops, and sometimes we'll like revamp it. But the crux of the entire thing is that we give out education about how you can be realistically sustainable in your everyday lives. So we were out here selling clothes, and like at first it wasn't on models. It was just like the clothes by itself. I would find what I thought was like my favorite types of clothes from thrift stores. And in all of these pieces, for me, there's a story. I never marketed it with a story or anything, but like I'm from DC, so I'm not from DC, but I was living in DC. So that's why this meant a lot to me. And, you know, we are in the DMV, so it's very important to be culturally just competent, always just slide it in there for me. But this one is one that really meant a lot to me because not a lot of people know who Maurice Malone is, but he's a Black denim designer from like, I guess he'd be considered like the 70s, 80s. And I maybe some people on the panel know about it, but I didn't necessarily know at first. And when I saw this at the thrift store, it was only $11. I was like, wow, this is some really good denim. And we always do a little bit more research into things. Just long story short. And I found out about Maurice Malone, and he was Black. And I was like, I love this. So I bought it, and I did more research on it when I got home. And I found out that like other people were selling stuff like this for like like $75 actually is what I saw the most expensive one. I was like, oh my gosh, I just bought this for $11. This is the first thing I ever bought from a thrift store. And I was able to resell it for $111. And that was the first time that I'm not $125. Sorry. I bought it for $11. I sold it for $125 on eBay. So then I just continued on, and that continuity. And I feel like this is activism for me. Because this is something, obviously, I mean, no one was pushing for me to do this other than myself. But it was like, I want to, when I started taking the pictures of my friends, I really wanted to document all of these people are my friends. It's actually my ex-boyfriend, LOL, shout out to Skylar. But like, I wanted to, sell these clothes, also document my friends, so many different people. None of them are models, believe it or not. Even her, she's not even a model. So she would never get these pictures of these people like this. But I know that at least for myself and my business sake, I have all these wonderful pictures of Black people in these unique clothes that are all secondhand. And that means so much to me. And I feel like one day, right now I'm 21, but when I'm able to truly tell my story, it'll be the story of these people, and it'll be the story of, yes, this is entrepreneurship. Yes, I sold these clothes, but really I gave an opportunity to all of my friends to connect themselves to like sustainability education. And all of these people know about Rendered. All of these people have bought clothes from Rendered before too. And like, this is my friend Kelly, she's really good friends with me. And so it's just like, this means a lot to me. And I feel like this is kind of like accidental activism, because it's always so easy to look back on things. And none of this, like, this is, people probably look at this and be like, oh, this is chaotic. Like, at first they're just, the clothes aren't even on people and they're just on hangers, and then there's no background, then there's a background. But this is like evolution for me. And this is growth in a very short amount of time. Like, I've only had the business for 2 years. Like, I'm 21, I started the business when I was 18, but I know how much it means to me. Just like everyone's different types of activism, like voting, different people vote for different reasons. So it's kind of like, do what's right for you, for real, really, truly do what's right for you. So fast forward now into the pandemic, and I didn't really have, I couldn't get into the thrift stores. Thrift stores were closed. I was like, and I got like laid off of my job. I was working as a server at a restaurant in downtown DC called Swahili Village. Shout out to them, the consulate. We actually weren't even able to have our grand opening, but I was working there before they opened and into the first couple of months. And I got laid off of that because of the pandemic. So I decided to take the clothes and start making face masks out of it. And that's like what this is. Those are some of the face masks that I made. And like just a whole bunch of other stuff inside of that. But it's cool because it's sustainable. But I had a really hard time getting the word out about that, because all of my customers were like college students. So that's just me and my entrepreneur mindset. Like, I'm just worried about college students. I'm not worried about everyone else. But I was living in DC. So I was like, what can I do to connect what I'm doing, which is getting face masks. The reason I made face masks is because like, it's really hard to find a good fitting face mask. Just like one that'll really, like if you have a smaller than average face or a larger than average face, it's not always easy to find one that like fits you perfectly. So I started making custom fitting face masks, and then I made this website called Face Mask DC, which is this is it right here, and it's a way for people to find people that are making masks, custom made face masks all over Maryland and the DMV. So I made this in April of 2020, not too long ago at all. And I just really used Facebook, and I just tried as hard as I could to find people. And most of these people are Black. I'm so thankful about that I'm able to give Black people an outlet. Like some people, this is just like a kind of secret. Like, this is a great, amazing woman. She's actually from Nebraska, and she really needed help getting the word out about like her, she was selling masks. And so like, I was like, okay, it's cool. Like, we can put you on the website or whatever. And I'm just trying to help people out and everything. She's the only person that's not. So it's funny that I ran across her. But like, all these people, all the rest of the people live in the DMV, and, you know, they're real people with real stories, and they're making beautiful masks by hand. And so like, I feel like this tells the story. And I made this website with a developer from scratch, and it's free to everybody. And so basically it's just a website where you can go, you can find out, you know, different masks from different people, contact the supplier, put in your information, they reach out to you, and you know, they send you the masks, and some of them are selling them and some of them are donating them. And that was really important for me, because like, this one is donating as well, because not everyone can afford masks. So this is a part of my social entrepreneurship that I'm so happy to just have done at any point in my life. You know, I did this when I was 21. This is just like 4 months ago. And it's something that I'm always gonna be able to look back on and be like, I I consider this activism, even though other people don't, I guess. I do. And that's what I know this to be, you know, and I'm so thankful because I was actually able to be on the news for it too. Shamari Stone, really amazing reporter. He actually got an Emmy too, Black man. It's just really amazing. But he did a story on me, and it went on NBC. So like that kind of thing. That's what I think about when we're talking about like entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, because there's so many different ways to go about these things, but we have to make sure that it serves a purpose. And as long as we do that, you know, just like Mazen just said, like, this is, it's up to us. It's not on anyone else. Like, if we listen to just the people that we're talking about, he might be a misogynist, like, when he's actually doing actual work in real life to benefit women, you know, it's just a label. It's just whatever anyone else wants to call it. So we just have to make sure that, oh, I see in the comments now too. Yeah, labels. And we are really amazing. And it's really just about knowing that for ourselves, being internally motivated. And that balance, I mean, we'll find it for ourselves. Because like doing all this, people might think that, you know, I'm balanced because how else would she do all this stuff without, but no. No, I'm just internally motivated. And I also grab motivation from things like this, like hearing everyone talk, knowing that all over the world and beyond what we know, people have been doing things to benefit other people. So I can too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so very grateful to hear this and be inspired by it as well, because, you know, it really, you're reiterating something very important, something that we keep saying, we've been saying at Africa Week 2020 and beyond. It doesn't matter how you get involved as long as you're involved, because whatever is happening in the world, wherever it's happening, involves you. And so if you're taking yourself out of this equation, you are allowing yourself to be written out of the story. You are allowing someone to dictate who you are, what you are, where you're going, and where you're going to end up being. And if that's okay with you, then that's okay with you. You don't have to care if you don't feel like it. No one's here to tell you, you know, what to feel or how to feel what you feel. But you absolutely don't need to, and this was also something that was reiterated in this morning's panel. It's like, you know, we all have a square. You know, how you step into that square, how you step into your square for, you know, to raise your cause or to ring the alarm is entirely up to you. If it means educating yourself and educating others, sure. If it means painting, sure. If it means singing, absolutely. If it means organizing rallies, good. If it means chalking pavements and leaving messages, good. If it means sitting outside embassies, you know, for hours and hours and hours and hours, fine. Whatever it means to you to be involved, to speak your truth, then that's what it is. We will have to wrap up. So I did see this comment from Joey earlier. Though a revolution is a collective activity, it is an individual trajectory done in masses. True leaders never lead for themselves, but also never look back to see who's following either. The goal of life, not survival, should be the universal connection. And, you know, Joey keeps watching us from behind the screen and dropping his wisdom and just refusing to come onto this screen. And I'm going to call him out on that. And, you know, I already told Mama Carmen, his mom, who will be with us on Friday, that I will not make him live this down if Africa Week 20. Joey, if you're listening, I will send you a recording of this because I'll tell you that there's a shout out for you. But if you're listening, if this week passes and your mother and your sister have presented and you haven't, we're going to have an entirely different active conversation, you and I. Alexandra has a comment here, definitely inspiring. being able to turn activism into actual business to make difference and help change the narrative. Yes, very, very, very empowering, because you know what? Again, we may not be balanced. God knows I am extremely imbalanced in so many different ways. Um, but that doesn't mean that we're not grounded. That doesn't mean that we that it feels right. You know, we may not be able to just entirely have a grasp on how to juggle all of these things just yet, but I feel like it's really important to understand, and it's one of the many reasons I'm so grateful to everyone who takes the time to show up to Africa Week 2020, to show up to these reunions, even if they're just playing it in the background, and will hop in and say a comment here or there, whenever they can, is knowing that we are seen, that we're not alone, because often you're sitting there and not to say who's following us, as Joey was saying, it's not to look for who's following us or who's calling us what or anything, but sometimes you really feel like it's a lonely business, because sometimes at some point, anyone who's fighting a fight had to stop and say, wait, where did everyone go? Because you were at the heart of a protest or a movement or a march or something, and then people pause or get distracted, and this isn't to blame anyone or point a finger or anything. It's just we have to understand that life is extremely fast paced, and it is designed to keep well, it's not designed to keep throwing things, but the system is designed to keep throwing things at us, to keep distracting us from things that that we feel is like, okay, this is where we need to go. And that's why it's so important to be able to make it sustainable. And I love what you've done with Rended, and I love the reason you started Rended in sustainability. And it's really at the heart of, okay, how do we make this sustainable? How do we keep this fight going without losing our minds? Like, how are we going to continue? And this is a genuine question to the family that is tuned in and watching. How do we keep this? How do we keep Africa Week 2020 going in a sustainable manner if it's just going to be Alexandra and I, and maybe every now and then we'll have a volunteer or two? It needs to be more, but how do we do it? How do we come together in a way that allows for this collective growth and collective expansion? And I think that's a conversation I'd like us to have more of, and maybe maybe if you have time later on the week, because now we have our calendar is opening up, because obviously we can't live stream the playlist that we sat and prepared and organized, because Facebook won't allow it, and rightly so, fine. We will share these playlists with you, because these videos are important, these conversations, the continuity of the struggle from as far back as interviews with Madiba and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King to interviews with Saba or TEDx talks from Aline, who was with us earlier. We're all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about the same thing, and we need to realize that that earrings feel like dropping sometimes, and without anything, you will have to pause, and you will have to find a different way to do things, because otherwise you're just going to drive yourself crazy. We're going to drive ourselves crazy if we keep doing this at the rate that we are. So, family, wherever you're tuned in from the world, if this is something that is of interest to you, if this is a conversation of interest to you, tonight I'm going to try something very, very, very crazy. We all have stuff to do. We are all working on something. And as much as we like to say, oh, self-care, and we're going to take a nap, and we're going to disconnect, and we're going to unplug. And Mazen might relate to this, but my friend Vincent tweeted something out as academics, like for academics, taking a day off means doing something that is rather mindless, but you're still doing work. It's not really taking some time off. And I feel like it's the same thing with activists. I think it's the same thing with humanists. I think it's the same thing with anyone who is trying to cause a difference, regardless of whatever label is plastered on them or whatever label they choose to call themselves. We don't know how to disconnect until we've gotten what we wanted. That's just how things are. We, like, the way we know what we want, we will not stop until we get it. And I think that's why we get this exhaustion. That's why we get this fatigue, and that's why we need to remind ourselves that no, we need to pump the brakes. No, we need to say, okay, no, I need to go out and take this walk, like Wafa said. So if you're open to it, later on, maybe about 10ish, I am going to try having a virtual co-working space. I work better knowing other people are working. And so I will drop the links to anyone who wants to join me. We're going to be working on whatever we're going to be working on, different as they may be. We'll we'll time some breaks to stop and check in, and if we come across something interesting, we'll share it in the comment space. This is an open invitation to anyone who's watching. We're watching this now, watching this later. It is the 22nd of September. So if you're watching this in October and we're not live, this is why, or November or whatever. But if you're watching this on the 22nd of September, tonight we're going to try an virtual co-working space, whether you're editing a paper or you're submitting a funding grant or you're starting your LLC. Wafa, I'm looking at you. If because I feel like while we're all working, we also we're able to say, hey, does anyone know this? Hey, does anyone have a connect to that? Just like we do when we're sat in, in my days, about more than a decade ago, we'd all gather in the library and be like, okay, we're all working on different papers for different classes from different departments, but just coming together and working, we're able to create that because the energy of productivity and creativity is there. We have 4 minutes left. Really, realistically, only 2.5. So I will give you a minute each to send a message to all the other accidental activists. And if you're open for it, we do have actually an opening on Friday at about 5, that maybe we can have a task force on creating like a guideline for the accidental activists, the do's and do nots, the things you need to be careful with, and maybe we can just have that as an open document for people to add their experiences and so on. But for now, tell me.
I would say for me is my biggest takeaway during this whole entire experience of finding my voice and using it and like really like activating it has been to, I've always been kind of looking for like-minded people, but as I've learned over the course of the last couple of years that my mind itself changes as I learn new things. So I'm trying to be more centered on finding like people who are like-hearted, because that's proving to be a lot more important right now. It's proving to be one of the most, the missing piece to a lot of the problems we have, of just finding that common ground on the level of heart to heart, human to human, taking it from there and then unpacking the systems from the bottom up approach and really like from an inside out, because I think so much we just are so impacted by everything happening around us that we really miss out on the opportunity to bring ourselves into these spaces fully. So that's what I'm hoping to do. And, my pledge is to keep on finding ways to challenge myself to like really not think so much with my brain all the time, because yeah, that's if I want to walk in that truth, I have to. If that's what I'm going for, I have to be about it. But yeah, that's my biggest takeaway.
Thank you for that. That's extremely inspiring. Oh, do you remember going to say something? Or do I just hear my... Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's extremely inspiring too. Loki took the words out of my mouth, so I don't even have anything to say. But as far as the things that I would recommend, or the things that I want to say to the accidental activists, reading, fundamental. When we say reading is fundamental, it's literally where we have to start. Like we can't go anywhere without reading or anything. So I have a couple book recommendations. I really love Barbara Smith. She has this amazing book. This was my favorite book for a couple months. But then I read this book by James Baldwin, and it's just amazing. Or it's not by James Baldwin, but it's basically just talking about, the writer is just, I mean, it's just, this is a book to read. I'm just going to say it. So this is the quote in here. It says, "Not everything is lost. Responsibility cannot be lost. It can only be abdicated. If one refuses abdication, one begins again." James Baldwin. So like this. And I'm a big part of the anti-racist movement. So that's just the last book that I'd say. All of these books really reflect me. Barbara Smith in her queerness, James Baldwin in his rage, and anti-racist, because if we're not anti-racist, you know, I feel like just the anti-racist movement is a good foundation when it's updated. He's still talking about, I mean, the man that wrote this at least is still talking about it in 2020. He's going around, and he did not create the anti-racist movement, but this thing is like alive and breathing. So we shouldn't ignore things, especially in America, that are like staring us right in our faces. And if we don't go out of our way to find these things and listen and read about these things, if we don't go out of our way purposely, then it's not going to happen. And we're just going to be sitting here in a space of ignorance. And I would hate for anyone to be blissfully ignorant, because it's that word isn't really, it's not really blissful, because someone's hurting, even if you aren't. So yeah, just to be active no matter what anyone says, because I'm about to graduate this December. I'm going to be the first person to graduate with a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics at the University of Maryland, College Park. And I can't say that this entire time I thought that it was going to happen. I hope so, but I've been hopeful. I'm just going to say, because everything, I mean, and I'm sure every single person can say this, but everything has been in my way to make it so. Like, I wouldn't graduate, or couldn't take these classes and everything, but it's happening. Right now it's September of 2020, and December is coming. November is coming too, but nonetheless, in December I will graduate. And so that's the kind of internal motivation, that I know about, that keeps me going. And I know that if people find the things for themselves, that we all can not center around them and their thing, but we can all center around the issues with the individual people, knowing what drives them and what's going to get them out there. Because all that matters is when you're called, you come. And whatever it is, just like you were talking about the movements in Sudan, it's just like, you know, when you have to come. And so I feel like I'm always being called, so I'm always there. Yeah, and it chooses you. And other times it'll be different things for different people, like the different organizations that they're in, the different opportunities they have to come and show up. But if you're not showing up, then you know, we're not doing it right. And I'm so thankful that everyone on the panel literally has shown up in so many different ways, and through school and education, because a lot of people think like, oh, well, you know, we're going through school, you're not really being active or like being an activist or anything. But it's like, no, you are doing what you need to do, and it's a process, and it's a movement, and it's not a moment. So that's how some people are showing up. So I just applaud Mazen for that too, a lot.
You are on fire. I just put another quote in here. It's a movement, not a moment. You know, feel free to put these quotes on your website. Just make sure you put Africa Week 2020 under them. And
sure.
Absolutely, it's a movement. But I'm so grateful to Tara.
Right? Shout out to Tara. Just a little side note. Literally, the reason that I got brought into this amazing family is literally because I spoke at a rally in DC, which is so funny that she said that. But it was at a rally in DC that I literally spoke for the first time. This organization called the Palm Collective. They had an event, and at the very end, they asked if anyone wants to come up and speak. So I was the very last person. I was really just there to listen and everything, take everything in. And I talked about needing to protect Black women. And I said it, and this is not, I didn't have anything prepared. I talked to it was just 3 minutes, but it was like the truest thing that I feel like I can at any point, like look back through all the things that I've ever done and said to people. I didn't know that anyone was recording. And I was like, I need y'all to support Black women because I need role models. I need inspirations. I need people that I can look up to and be like, that's going to be me one day. And the rate that people in real life are actually supporting Black women, it's not there. But if you listen to everyone, you kind of would think that it is, but it's not. I promise you, it's not. And this Black woman liberation movement is going to be that thing. And it's coming. It's not here yet. In the future, I'm glad to just be. I mean, it's always going. These movements are always going, and these revolutions are always going. Just like you said, it continues.
Yeah. And it's here. And this is. I say it's here because you're here. I say it's here because Wafa's here. No, I'm serious. I say it's here because you know how many women are here and are doing it. Are really, 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 really doing it. Like, no joke.
That's true.
So it's here. It's here, and that's a big part of why, you know, there are blankets and things being thrown over it so that people don't know that it's here. But it's here. It's definitely here. Believe that. And I really have to close this. But I want to say that that's one thing I loved about that video, about that what you said is that you found a way to personalize what you're doing. Yeah. Yes, it's for the good of everyone and the balance of to bring balance to this world. But ultimately, I personally need this. Me, which is the same thing I was saying about me sitting at the embassy. This isn't, yes, I'm here to support and show solidarity to the people in Sudan, but I need to sit here to feel grounded. I need to feel connected to this land. So this is why I'm sitting here. It's a selfish. I'm sitting here for a selfish reason. The fact that it's being taken and you know it's giving support to someone, fantastic, great. I'm glad. I'm grateful. But this is personal. This is me. I'm saying this is me. I'm first and foremost, because if it's for me, I will not stop until I get it, which is why I have not stopped, and which is why I say this revolution continues and will continue to continue. And for all those tuning in, we will continue this conversation. If you keep checking this calendar, there's a solid chance there's going to be a follow-up panel to build this guide. So lots of love, blessings, peace, and
the working hour, right? Is that today?
Yes, we'll be starting at 10.
Okay.
Yes, stay tuned. Yes, excellent.
I'll be there.
Pajama party.
Thank you so much. And so
Thank
nice
you for joining. Thank you for tuning in, family.
So nice to meet you, Sophie.
Oh,
well, I think we'll be seeing a lot of each other.
Doubt. Till then, here are the ending credits. Refresh your browser for the next session on spirituality now. If you have time, don't miss it.